Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy FOMC week. Happy almost Christmas. It has been a pretty boring range bound ES for the past few weeks, but this is as expected, right? We knew that it was going to be a little bit quieter, especially after Thanksgiving, and we were going to have some pretty small price action. So if you guys had a green week last week, congratulations. If you guys had a red week, don't stress, right? It's not super unusual for price action around this time of the year to be a little bit difficult, even for some of our global commodities. And so I think now's a really great time to be patient, size down a little bit, and maybe even size down your expectations on how much profit you could be taking. Now, before we do look into our fractals, I want to look to see what other data we have throughout the week. Because one of the things with our FOMC week, if we tend to have uh, FOMC with no really other data kind of prior to it, we have two things that could happen, right? We could get pinned and end up kind of just being range bound until FOMC actually happens. Or we could see the markets kind of mechanically want to price in any sort of anticipated move. And I think right now, based on a lot of the economic data that's been coming through, it's kind of supported the FOMC's thesis of wanting to cut rates yet again. And so it's possible that we could potentially see some float this week. It's also possible we could see some chop. But our job here is not to predict the market. Our job is to simply react to the market with appropriate data that we get through fractals. But regardless, let's see if we have any data this week to see if there's any sort of tape bombs or something that we could potentially be worried about. So Monday, it's going to be pretty quiet. We don't really have any big economic data to look for. Now, tomorrow, we do have our jobs opening, our JOLTS jobs opening, um, pretty close to right after market opens, or I think it might even be 30 minutes right before market opens. And then, of course, on Wednesday, we do have our FOMC meeting at 2 o'clock Eastern. That will be happening. Um, and see, as you can see here, the forecast here is that they will be cutting another 25 basis points because we're currently sitting at 4%. And then Thursday, we do have trade balances and jobless claims. And then we do not have anything on Friday. So we actually have a pretty quiet week, to be totally honest, overall. But I am looking forward to that FOMC meeting on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, as I think we could see some pretty decent, hopefully, see some decent volatility there to be able to trade. So let's go look at our ES real quick. So in regards to how we've been trading, we have technically broken outside of the top of yellow box. But this is a pretty similar story to what I think we saw um, on what was this? This was on Thursday last week, and honestly, even Friday last week. So Thursday last week, we didn't even break out of the yellow box until New York session opened, and then we had this really quick push up above it, and then ended up taking a yellow box loss. And I don't even think we ended up like tapping average range at that point. So we did break outside of yellow box overnight, and are pretty much struggling. We've been very, very range bound, kind of stuck between some buying and selling in this area. So not too much action. Um, there's really not too much to be trading here right now. So let's go into fractals to see if there's anything clear on ES in terms of direction or bias for the day. Okay, so let's go pull open our wave one daily. Okay. So on our wave one daily, we are currently showing our vector at 68.8925. We have our open state that we've been building in this current wave at 69.0498. We are currently at an H4. Now I want to confirm this because there last week we did have some pretty weird data on the wave one daily. It wasn't showing up well, so I just do want to actually confirm that we're in an H4 because last week was super weird. Yes, we are. Okay, so we are have had full four technically bullish days on ES. So it looks like our wave one daily data is finally accurate again, which is good to see. So even though we've had four H's, we've barely moved. We are only sitting at our 80% odds now. One of the interesting things we can look at too, though, is that in our options analyzer, our odds of an H4 to an H5 are actually not that terribly low. And I think it's probably because we haven't really moved too much. So in terms of bias on the day, I think it could probably go either way. Like, yes, we've had a lot of green, green days in a row, or H's in a row, but like we're actually not that overextended on the wave one daily. We're barely tapping the 80% odds. Um, For example, one of the last times we were looking at potential like bearish bias was looking at this open state all the way up here at the 50% odds. So I think we can go either way. There's not a huge bias on the wave one daily currently. Okay, let's go into our 7 wave 60. Okay. Oh yes, the same horrible compression that we have been seeing. So you can see here that the 7 wave 60 just keeps making more and more stacked open states to both the upside and the downside because we've had this really, really small range on ES for the past long time. Back till 1126 is when we've kind of started this really compressed, messy range. So we're currently trading below pivot. Our vector's at 85.13, so I believe we're slightly trading above vector. We're at 85.75, so we're pretty much um, vector, I would say, but slightly below pivot. So we are creating a bearish wave currently. Um, Now, in regards to potential downside, we do have these open states at 68.64 and 68.60, which isn't actually too far away, but I do kind of like that cluster of open states to the downside. So I am going to just mark that real quick on my chart. And if we have any other confluences down there, um, that could potentially be good for a bounce, especially to play this really, really small range that we've been having. So 64, I'm going to say 64 and a half to 60 has some potential based on these two open states as well as the 50% odds at 63. Now, the only reason I'm not really looking too much further is simply because this is the range we've been having. I don't really think too much is going to happen today to elicit some sort of massive move. Now, to say that we're going to get 20 points off of this level, who knows, right? We're going to obviously manage our risk if we do take a position in this area for a bounce. But because it would be basically playing this range, I do like something down here, especially because we have this density. And of course, because we're in a short wave, we're not going to be looking at reject zones because as we tend to move back up above pivot, um, we are going to see these open states potentially change based on new values based on the magnitude of movement. So let's go into our 20 wave 15. All right, same compressed range that we're seeing here on the fractals chart. Um, you can see here we have these similar open states at 61.58 and 64.27. So I think our last 7 wave 60 we ended up doing up to 64.50. So these two open states do align with where what we saw on the 7 wave 60. Um, we do have 48 to 51 down here for some open states and 10 and 5% odds. We could potentially put a zone there, but now we're going to be stacking zones, like zone after zone. So we'll wait on something down there if we kind of have a strong move down. But I'm not going to be looking too much further beyond, I think, these open states that we saw in the 7 wave 60. So let's see. We do have another open state here at 57, 55, and 56 is the 10% odds on the 10 wave 15. So that does expand our zone a little bit. We could potentially do 64 and a half to 57, 57 and a half if we wanted. So that'd be a 7 point zone. I might actually do that just to recognize a few more things, especially if we have something else in that area. So I am just going to make a little line at 57 and a half. And then if we do have additional influences down there, I will make this zone all the way up there. But right now I would see 57 and a half as a little bit of a last line of defense. Um, and then we do have this other zone at 63.78 as well as a 20% odd. So that is in confluence with what we're seeing on our 7 wave 60 and 20 wave 15 as well. Okay, so let's go look at the 7 wave 5. Okay, so we're currently making a short wave on the 7 wave 5 as well, just barely. Um, we are seeing a open state down here, basically at 58 is the 2% odds on the 7 wave 5, and then 66 and a quarter is a little bit higher than where we're currently at. We could bring this level up to 66 and a quarter, as that is the 5% open states on the 7 wave. But I think I want to keep my zone as it is. Excuse me. I think I want to keep my zone as it is a little bit further down, and use that kind of 57, 58 as like a little bit of a last line of defense. Since that is the 2% odds, I'd get us quite overextended on the 7 wave 5 minute. Okay, 50 wave 1 is one of the only time frames we're making a long wave on. So you can see that our pivot is at 83 and we're currently trading at 89. So we are above pivot there. And again, guys, we're not going to be looking at zones to the downside here until we see cross below pivot for updated zones on the 7-way 50. So I'm just going to make a note on my chart to check sorry, the 50 wave one. The 50 wave one for um, short wave is what I'm just going to put a note down here on ES. Um, and we can, whoops, we can check that at New York session open. So this is what my chart looks like currently for ES. Um, You'll notice that I didn't mark vector, and that's simply because we have been anchored on vector basically the whole night. So I'm not expecting vector to have any sort of like strong rejects or bounces at the current moment, just because we have been using it as anchor, and that's a pretty dangerous place to kind of be trading it because you could get caught and chopped pretty quickly there. So we will not be marking vector, but because we're mostly in a short wave, all of our time frames are in short waves minus the 50 wave 1 minute. I have my zone marked from 68, 64, 75, all the way down to 68, 60, with a essentially a last line of defense at 68, 57, 50 is really where that last line of defense is going to be for me on any sort of bounce play that I would take down here. I would be all out of my position at a break below 68, 57, 50 at that point. So let's go look at gold real quick as well. See how we're doing on the gold side of the house. So let's see. So we're currently trading at 42.35. Wow. Look at how boring gold was last night too. So here we were at market open, really, really tight range. So our yellow box on gold is 36.5 to 17.9. So I think we've barely breaken out of the top of yellow box. It has been pretty uninspired, I would say. Um, 898 to 900. Coupon, are you looking at ES for that? 898 to 905. Let's go look at it. I mean, we do have this open state on the 50 wave 1 minute at 98 and a half. The only reason I don't want to look at, oh, here we go. We're making a long wave now. Okay, look, we actually are getting new data here. So we have 95 here on the 10 wave 15 and 98 open state. We have 900 is an open state and the 50% odds. Let's see. Let's look at the 7 wave 60 real quick. See if we're still making a short wave there. 7-wave 5 minute. It's still making a short wave. I don't know, Coop. I wouldn't want to consider 98 to 05 until we get a little bit more consistency moving above pivot. The 50 wave 1 minute does have some overextension up there. So I think that looks good on the 50 wave one. I would want to see everybody start moving above pivot to see if we have any sort of like A plus setup up at that area. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised if that 98 to 05 area ends up being a lot more of a dense area, especially with how range bound we have been. So if we can see some consistency above that area, I would like to look at it. But right now, I'm not going to say too much on it just because we have a lot of short waves forming currently. Let's go look at gold. Okay, so gold is boring. Let's go see if there's any levels on gold. So let's go look at the wave one daily first. Okay, so our wave one daily is currently forming an H4. Let's go just pop into our options analyzer real quick to see. So our odds of an H4 are actually pretty low currently, um, which is good to see. You could potentially argue that there is a little bit of a bearish bias today on gold, um, based on where we're currently trading at on our options analyzer, despite being very range bound. But our vector on the wave one daily currently is 42.3380. Let's go hop into our 7 wave 60 to see if we have any clarity on what's going on. It's kind of crappy to see that gold is making a very similar pattern as ES and NQ on the fractals. Because basically back until like early November, we kind of had a couple opportunities where the 7 wave 60 was pushing us up to the 10% odds. But basically, since the start of December, we've had that same story of this really, really tight compression, on our 7 wave 60, barely wanting to get above the 50% odds and tending to build a lot of these very stacked open states on our larger time frames, which we don't really tend to see this too often. So, um, there's a lot of opportunity in regards to resistive areas that are pretty dense on larger time frames, but we're range bound, so maybe we won't be having some crazy moves. But right now, we're below pivot, below vector on gold. We do have this 4203 open state that we have created on actually our prior short wave, I believe. I think we're making a double bottom on this. So this 4202.79 is the current short wave open state. We do have some opportunity down here at 4172, which feels very far away, as well as 4156. So 4172 feels really far away. I'm not going to mark this on my chart quite yet. And again, we're not looking for upside rejections because we are trading below pivot on the 7 wave 60, but we'll see if our other time frames say something different here. Okay. So making a short wave on the 20 wave 15, we trading slightly above vector currently, but we again made this double bottom down here at 4292 and 4202 and 4200. So if you wanted to play the range, 4202 to 4200 could be a decent area. The one thing I don't like about it is, again, that would just be tapping us at the 80% odds on the 20 wave 15. The only other opportunity we have is all the way down at 4164. We have an open state all the way down at the 2% odds. So the 20 wave 15 actually isn't showing too much opportunity beyond this double bottom that we're seeing. 20 wave 5 minute is a relatively similar story. We do have the 5% odds at 4189. Um, and then a 2% odds at 4173, but there is a little bit of something at this 4202. Another reason I kind of like that area is because we have a lot of previous open states that were closed in this whole zone. So we had an open state that was closed historically at 4198. We have the current one at 4202 and a half, and then we did just close one at 4204. So 4202 and a half is not looking great, but there is maybe potential opportunity there. Let's go look at the 10 wave 15 real quick. So again, we're seeing that same double bottom that we've been seeing on a lot of our other time frames. 4196 is our 50% odds, and we do have an open state at 4187. However, we haven't seen any other open states at 4187 on our other time frames, so I'm not giving that any sort of weight at this point. And we do have something down here at 4172, which is our 10% odds, but I think again, going back to our 7 wave 60, 4172 and a quarter. We do have something on our 7 wave 60. 4172 down here. And that is in confluence with our 20%. So let's just pencil in 4167 to 4172. Very far away, right? But the other reason I don't love marking something that's this far away is if we have something that, like if we have something that pushes us up into start to form long waves, um, on a lot of these time frames, we're gonna have to remark these levels. So 4172 seems pretty far away, but I'm going to pencil it in just because it is the only decent confluence we've been seeing so far. Let's go look, see if 4202 has any other confluences here. So we do have this 4202 and 4198. 96 to 202 is basically another dense area. Our 7 wave 5 minute is showing that a little bit better. Um, and if we really did want to play the range, 41, we could even say 97 to 4202 could be a potential. So let's pencil that one in too, because even though, whoops, even though it seems like kind of range bound or kind of like what do you want to call it? High up on the fractals charts in regards to like the 7 wave 60 and things like that, because we have been making such a small range, there might actually be opportunity there. So I'm going to do 420, let's just do like 4202.9 to 4196.8 is what that zone is. I'll show you guys my chart here once we're done looking at our other time frames. Let's go look at the 50 wave one. So same story, 4202 and a half is this 2% odds on the 50 wave one, which would be showing us kind of that bounce based on this tight range we've been playing in. So gold looks pretty boring here right now. So we have this 4202.8 area that I have marked all the way down to 4196.4, more or less. And then we have this other area way down here at 4172 down to 4167. So this one is going to be a very lightly marked zone because if we do end up actually coming down this far, if we end up having some type of retracement up, that causes us to make long waves and then move back down. These zones will of course become invalidated again. Maybe there's some opportunity there today. Just one last thing we'll look at real quick, just to make sure we're seeing any sort of opportunity. Let's just go look at NQ to see if there's any different movement on NQ as opposed to ES this morning. Oh, good. Surprise, surprise. NQ's on the same crap as ES right now. NQ's on a little bit of a different BS this morning because we did end up actually making a short wave late last week on NQ. So we do have a slightly different data. So I think NQ probably has a little bit more opportunity for upside today. What I will say, compared to yes, I suppose, instead of opportunity for upside, the bias is probably less strong for a potential bearish move on NQ today because we made that short wave on what was that Thursday last week. Whereas if you guys remember on ES, we have just been making long after long, like H after H on ES. So we did end up having a little bit of divergence on NQ, which is kind of nice to see. We have this open state up here at 45,919, very, very far away, almost 100 points away. That would kind of keep us in the same really tight stacked range bound area on NQ. We are making a long wave there. Let's see if we're making long waves on some of our shorter time frames. What do we got going on here? Same compression that we're seeing on ES, of course. Holy moly, where are we on this? Are we long or short right now? I think we're technically making a long wave right now. I think our price is trading right there. 803. We are. So we do have 25,832 is that most recent open state that we've made in this current long wave. So again, we do like to ignore those. 25,876 is that next open state that we're seeing on the 7 wave 60, just above our 80% odds. Again, not very overextended on NQ, but because we've been in this really tight compression, 876 might have opportunity if we have something else there. So let's see what else we got going on. So there's 876. We do have something all the way up at 892. So 76 to 92 is a pretty big range on NQ, but there is another open state up there. So 76 to 90, that's a pretty big range, guys. I don't know if we want to mark that one, huh? What do you think? But regardless, that's where our next open state is from the previous long wave we did create. It's not super overextended on the 20 wave, but it would be playing this range that we have been seeing on both ES and NQ. Let's just go look at the 10 wave real quick. So we're seeing 64 and then 899. So we don't see any confluences between that 76 to like 90 area. Let's go see what our 7 wave 5 minute says. Okay, so our 7 wave 5 minute does have a little bit of divergence here because that one is making a short wave currently, which I wouldn't be surprised actually if we move above it because our pivot is at 25,810. But Fractals is currently showing short wave, which is okay. Oh my God, look at all these open states on the 7 wave 5. This looks crazy. Let's see what we got going on here. 25, 8, 54 to 65. Look at this zone. 854 to 65. That's such a dense zone of open states. Look at that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 open states up there. Now, here's the thing though. Because we're currently making the short wave and we're currently below pivot, I really want to watch this to see if and when we do start making a long wave, how these numbers change. Because they're going to change, obviously. Let's be patient on that to see if we get any sort of revision here in the next few minutes. But that's such a dense stack open states that I want to see what that number changes to when we actually do start making a long wave because that's interesting looking. So on the 50 wave one, we're also making a short wave. We do have a similar open state at that 63, which I anticipate it to change to a pretty similar number if we do actually start forming long waves. So what I'm going to leave you guys with is I do really want to see the 7 wave 5 and the 50 wave 1 start making a long wave to match up with what we're seeing on some of our mid to longer time frames on NQ to see where this horrible snaggle of open states, geez, ends up actually landing. Because if it does end up in that like 76 to 93 area, I'd actually really like that for an attempt at shorts on NQ. So this is the zone I have on NQ right now. It's from 76 and a half basically to 92 and a half. This one's not as good as I think some of those zones that we saw like on gold or ES, for example, especially because our 7 wave 5 and our 50 wave 1 are not making those long waves. But depending on where that really messy stack of open states ends up, we might have some decent opportunity actually on NQ this morning as well. So all right, guys. Pretty boring day, pretty boring overnight session, I would say. So, as always, trade safe, really be aware of your position size, and please do not overtrade. We're so close to the end of the year. Everybody's been putting in so much hard work and actually following your strategy and sticking to your plan. Now is not the time to be going on tilt, not the time to be overtrading, and not the time to be just like blowing accounts for the sake of blowing accounts. So, um, if your setup does not present itself, guess what? Don't trade, right? It's as simple as that. And so just remember that as we kind of get into these holidays and these next weeks get a little bit quieter. We also do have FOMC this week. And so, um, we're going to want to make sure that we're just staying patient and making sure we're okay with a little bit of chop on Monday and Tuesday if that is the case. But guys, just a little bit of admin as we go into the rest of the week. I will be trading with our Ascend Premium and live trading, starting at New York Open today through Wednesday. But I do have an ultra marathon this weekend, so I will be taking Thursday and Friday off to prepare for that. And I actually do not want to make any promises that I will be trading that following Monday because my brain might be completely fried. And so I do not want to be trying to trade and make decisions with you guys if I'm tired with zero glycogen in my brain. So I will see you guys tomorrow and Wednesday for pre market prep. Beyond that, guys, have a great morning. And if you are in our Ascend Premium, I will see you guys for New York session. See you guys.